I think I might consider cracking into a beer. I think you should do the same. I look a little sleepy eyed because I got my writing done early this morning, and I spent the afternoon watching a show on Amazon called Expats. And before you watch it, it is heavy duty. I feel like I've been put through the ringer. However, it is absolutely incredible. Nicole Kidman and a bunch of names I don't know, but a writer that just blows my mind. And I don't know if you have the stomach for really heavy stuff. It doesn't get much better. At least the first few episodes that I got pulled into this afternoon. Hello from let's see. I love seeing you guys here. Donna, Cindy, Nicole, hi there. From Boise. I love it. My arch enemy lives in Boise, but we're not going to go there. Actually, it's kind of a funny story. This person, I'm going to keep it really vague, but this person did my family and me wrong years ago. And I did what every writer would do. I put him in one of my stories and kind of made a name that rhymed with this person's name. And then I made him a really bad guy who got his due in the end. So that's what we do as mad scientists of the page. Let's see who else. Hi, Christy Cooley. Good sound. It's a little blurry. Okay. Well, how about everybody else? Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Heidi. Leanne. The Otis fan club in Florida. I will talk about Otis in a little bit. I'm so organized today that I have an agenda that I'm going to start here in a second. Let's see. South Carolina, another South Carolina, my home state. A Greenville, not too far away from Spartanburg, where I was born. Darlene, Jennifer, you got your copy today. Hi, Stephanie in Florida. And let's see, Diane. Lauren, everybody. Okay, picture's clear. So I think I might just get started. Because tonight is a big night. Today is a big day. I'm really excited about this story. I'm going to do some readings. As you know, I somehow, in a frisky mood this morning, I promised that I'd read an English part, which I'm regretting tremendously, but we'll see. Maybe this will help. I'm going to crack, I feel like I'm in a beer commercial, a Grateful Grains New England IPA. Only once I moved to New England did I fall in love with IPAs, and now I totally understand them. And New England IPAs are IPAs that have a bit of haze to them. And what is going on in our life having to do with this beer is our son just spent a month at camp up in the Lakes region, and it has become a tradition when we go up there that we stop at Grateful Grains for some beer. And then there is a woman on the side of the road. It's about an hour and a half drive. There's a woman on the side of the road near Riggs's camp that makes the best blueberry pie I've ever had in my whole life. And I didn't even know I liked pie, but 3 years ago, I just pulled over because I thought it was just amazing that she had these refrigerators outside. And we bought a pie for $30. They were 28, now they're 30. They're expensive, but they're wild blueberries from Maine. And I don't know what's better. Please read in your English voice. Oh God, here we go. Let me have a sip, and we'll get there. We'll get there eventually. We have some ground to cover. So, cheers, everybody. I feel that those of you who take the time to be here right now on a 4:30 Tuesday call, you guys mean so much to me because you're likely the ones who've been following me for a while or have just discovered me, but get where I'm coming from and get my heart and spread the word. So I'm so grateful. And so the first thing that I want to mention, a lot of you, at least some of you, are in my ARC team or my beta reading team. But I want to do I want to give away 5 books. And there's 2 ways you can do it. And I'll mention this again. You can go to my website, boowalker.com, and sign up for my newsletter. And I get a little message if you do that in the next, few hours. And then also, if you just ask me a question, and bear with me because I will, I'm going to talk for a little bit, but if you just ask me a question at some point over the next little bit, I will also include you in the giveaway, and I'll select you tomorrow, and happily send you a signed copy of my new book, An Echo in Time. Let's see. Listening to the audible version on chapter 7, and I'm loving every minute. Thank you, Christy. They did a great job. So here's the thing with my somebody asked this earlier today with reviews and reading my book and listening to Audible. So I get the great pleasure of hearing and helping choose the narrators, and I'm so in love with them, but I can't listen to the whole book because it's the same reason I can't read my books after they're published. I pick it apart. It crushes me. Every sentence I want to restructure. But I'm so glad that it's rocking. Oh, this is a really good question, Leanne. So anyway, about reviews, that's the other thing. Do I read reviews? A lot of authors think this is ridiculous, and I so appreciate reviews. They make my world go round. Reviews are how we authors get into the algorithms and spread the word. But I just learned about maybe 4 books ago that my life was a lot better when I did not read reviews, because of course I like the 5-star reviews. There was one time that my wife and I still joke about it. She teases me about, someone called me an international treasure, maybe a national treasure, and then I think I changed it to international treasure. And I remind my wife whenever she's getting frustrated that she's married to an international treasure. So on the nicer side, when I read a 5-star review, I either get inflate my ego, or I feel this pressure to do it again. And then on the other side is when there's a 1-star review and someone's frustrated, and I just hold them in my heart. If someone picks on my writing or picks on, my lack of research or something, I just can't let it go for a few days. So someone asked that question to me earlier today about reviews, and that's why. What was my catalyst for sharing the gift of writing with the literary world and us? Donna, that is really nice. So I've talked about before my hand issues with playing music. And as soon as I couldn't play music anymore, it was instantly, where am I going to put all this energy? And I guess, after my hand injury, I went through a bit of a dark time, came out of it writing, and it just felt perfect in my soul. It felt like I'd found an even better way to express myself. So that's what I've just been doing for as long as, God, so long. I wrote my first book, Low Country Punch. So many times I paid different editors. I worked with different editors. Half of it at one point took place all in Bolivia, and that's just gone into the ether. I deleted it all. But that's how I learned, and I think it got really dangerous when some of you guys started writing and saying that my writing meant a lot to you. It started to kind of fuel me. Let's see. Hi there, Cecilia Mecca. Oh, you guys are so sweet to be here. I'm going to come back to some questions. Let me hop into a reading, not one in England, but let me hop into a bit about Charlie. So let me just take a step back. Let me tell you about the book, and then we'll ease into Charlie, and then we'll meet Charlie and her best friend, Vivian. So An Echo in Time is a generational trauma story. It's about a woman named Charlie who has very much come alive in my head and imagination in the way you want characters to the point where I just felt like when I was writing the scenes, I felt that I was in her skin. It was a really nice feeling. Except for the fact that she was really struggling at the beginning of her story. So I felt bad as well. But she's, oh God, it's been so long ago. I'm not exactly sure. I think she's 28. And she tried to open a bookstore in Boston, and that failed. And pretty much her life is very much just butting up against obstacles. I keep saying she just keeps running into red lights. And she is right on the edge of giving up. She comes from a long line of disasters, especially on her mother's side, and giving up in a pretty heavy way, suicidal tendencies, and just what else can she do? She's tried everything, and she feels like it's almost a curse. And it just so happens that she goes to dinner with her best friend Vivian, who is also another character that I have seen in my head as long as this book was a seed in my mind. And I was so excited to read this first bit. So I'm gonna read the beginning of chapter 2, just so you get a taste of who Vivian is, and then I'll skip a bit to where Charlie realizes that there's maybe an answer out there. Donna says, Charlie reminds me of several students I had while in education. Yeah, and I've got some friends like that as well. And, we all bump into red lights from time to time. Okay, so Charlie has just completely screwed up with her boyfriend, been broken up with. He's a doctor, and she just screwed up and didn't show up to an important date with him and his mother. So now she's recovering, and I think it's her weekly visit with Vivian. You're kidding me, Vivian says, showing that radiant smile of hers. It's not funny, Charlie whispers, paranoid of others eavesdropping. She and her best friend are at their favorite restaurant, but like everywhere else in Boston, real estate is valuable. So the restaurateurs squeeze their patrons in, leaving enough space between tables so that you won't elbow your neighbor. Charlie has just recounted the sorry tale of how Patrick and her relationship had reached its conclusion. Viv lets her smile fade and leans in. Her braids are long enough to graze the white tablecloth. I know it's not funny, but still, you have to laugh a little. Losing your keys, red lights, the wrong restaurant. There's some part of you that's doing this intentionally, because you and I both know you're not looking for anything serious. Uh-oh, I gotta get into these. Yeah, well, we'd run our course. Her eyes widen. He was a good one, Charlie. I know he was a good one. She pulls her wine glass toward her and twists the stem. Even if he's the best catch in New England, Vivian says, you're going to find something wrong with him before too long. It's almost like you don't think you deserve a good man. Charlie whips a hand in the air. Look at my competition, Viv. You should be the one dating him. Charlie sighs as she takes in her friend. They're both 29, born a week apart. Viv has teeth that a dentist would put on marketing materials and lips that women would kill for. Her golden brown skin belongs to a supermodel. She's great at being a friend and so funny all the time, so happy. And talk about brilliant. She was the top of her class at Yale Law, and that was after 4 years at Harvard. She is unstoppable. When she eventually has children, after she's conquered the world, she'll make it look so easy. So there's a little taste of Vivian, and we're going to fast forward to a little bit later in this same dinner conversation, and you get the gist that Charlie is just going down a wormhole of darkness. So Viv leans in. Did I tell you I'm seeing a spiritual guide? Hold on, what? Charlie didn't see that one coming. Yeah, I've seen her twice now because my souped up human life is not all that you think it is. Charlie had just previously said her that her life is perfect. That's what that reference is to. Wait, you're seeing a spiritual guide and you're just now telling me? Viv draws a circle in the air toward Charlie's head. We had to wade through your stuff first. That's fair. I'm sorry. Your turn now. Her friend gets real, which is another wonderful trait of Viv. I've felt a little superficial lately, do this, do that, but to what end? What's out there? A neighbor of mine has been working with a spiritual guide for a while, and I thought, what the heck? Turns out this guide is plugged in like no one else I've ever met. She's changing my life, and that's only after 2 sessions. What is she, like a psychic? Charlie tries not to show that she feels left out. She's a soul reader, a kind of yogi or guru. I don't even know what happens in there. She sits across from me and pulls back the layers. I'm telling you, she can see inside me, see that I've always defined myself by my work, my grades, my accomplishments. She's helping me get to know myself better, Kind of reminds me of me, actually. I see where that Viv came out. Charlie leans forward on her elbows and listens intently, not only because she wants to be a good friend, but also because she's intrigued. Why is the most perfect woman in America seeing a soul reader? Is she really dissatisfied with the life she's living because her incredibly hot and chivalrous boyfriend wants to take the next step? She has a retreat coming up in Costa Rica, Viv continues, doing family constellation therapy. This is what I wanted to get to. I'm dying to go, but there's no way I can get away from work right now, which I know is counterintuitive to me trying not to work as much, but whatever, I still have to work. What is it? Charlie asked, noticing a server pass by with a delicious tray of food. Viv starts talking with her hands. It has to do with transgenerational patterns, memories, trauma. Being a Black woman, I can tell you without a doubt that trauma gets passed down. You've heard me talk about that, but it's more than genetics. With family constellations, a family exists within a cloud, a sort of energy field that includes dead members. All my ancestors are connected to me. If something bad happened to them, or if they did something bad, I could be suffering from it too. Francis says the therapy allows the family to restore balance, taking away the suffering of not only you, but your family too. I know it sounds whack, but Charlie hears a bell ring in her head. This could totally be what's going on in her family. No, no, it doesn't sound whack, not completely. You're looking at me funny. No, Charlie says, I'm thinking that it sounds like something I need more than you do. And I'm thinking I'm the worst friend in the world for not being there for you, not knowing this stuff about you. Who was there for me when I caught my ex-fiance, he who shall not be named, sleeping with his boss? And it goes on from there, but I think that passage is a nice introduction to, we had to wade through your stuff first. Thank you, Vicki. A nice introduction to what we're talking about with this story and what we're dealing with. Transgenerational trauma is something I was introduced to, right before I came up with the idea of this book. And I think it's absolutely fascinating, this idea that things that happened 100, 200, 300 years ago in our family tree trickle down. And not only in the way it trickles down, like as our parents raise us with the pain that they felt, and then we raise our kids with the pain that they felt, in a way that's almost hard to explain. And that's where family constellation therapy comes into it. The idea with constellation therapy is that, as I mentioned here, imagine that your whole family line is this flock of, let's say, sparrows, and they're all moving in one direction. And then if one of the sparrows falls out of line, it messes up the entire flock. And it's the same idea with the people in our family tree, even those who are dead and gone. If there is someone misplaced in this beautiful constellation, then it very well may upset the balance for those that are living in the current moment. And this is what Charlie discovers as she chases down Vivian's spiritual guru. She takes part in one of these constellations that we might call a seance. And I was fortunate enough to take part in a few myself and was really impacted by it. It was extraordinary. And what Charlie came away with is that something very violent and ugly happened in her past, and not in her, not during her lifetime, in someone else, in the lifetime of someone else in her family tree. And the only hint she gets in this constellation, well, there might be one or two, but the idea is that it's something to do with her family line in England. And so the entire story is about her headed to England and trying to track down the truth of what this violent act was. What I have not talked about as much, let's see, let me take a break for a second. Constellation therapy is real. That's the question. It is 100% something that a ton of people practice and believe in. And what I know, I'm not going to get into an argument about whether it works or not, but I will tell you that a lot of people lives are changed by it. And I thought it was extraordinary. I was highly impacted by it. And it's something you can find in Boston and in big cities and really around the world. And I think it's something that's really, it's worth exploring. Sometimes we can't really figure out what's going on with us, and it's nice to dig into our family tree and see what occurred before we were even created. I feel like someone just cut off the video thinking, whoa, this is really too woo-woo for me. Where has Boo gone? But remember, I'm the same guy who made Otis howl naked at the moon. So there is no end to the woo-woo. I mean, I'm just getting started. I'm brainstorming my my third book in this new contract. And part of me is like, just let it all out. I read The 15 Lives of Harry August while I was in Mexico last month, and it just floored me. And it's kind of magical realism and alternate lives. And I'd love to play with that one day. I'm not ready yet, but in a few books, by all means. Not woo woo enough. Thank you, Lucretia. That's why you and I see so eye to eye. And that's what I find with so many of you guys is I can just wave my freak flag and you guys wave yours right back. And I think we can make a beautiful pairing doing that. Let's see. So for those just joining, I'm talking about giving away some books. All you have to do to get one of the 5 signed books I'm sending away is either sign up for my newsletter on my website or ask a question here on this Facebook page. And I will dig through these and do a raffle tomorrow or when I get some time. Wow, Jenny's friend's wife does this research at a university on generational trauma. This is great. It's really beyond fascinating. And I try my best to give some of the really cool examples that helped me understand it in the book. I might get to one tonight. Let's see if I, oh, you guys are all on the same page. Someone asked, what's up with the moving? So, and am I moving again? So I think I mentioned last year, we moved to Maine with the idea that our son, who is 11 now, who is at his first tackle football practice as quarterback today, getting ready for the new year. He needed a place that was stationary to grow up through high school. We have moved around a lot, and a lot of that is because we have the fortune to, because I'm able to work from anywhere, but also because it's really important for me to experience a setting to be able to write it in the way that I need to. However, there's a curse that follows me, and it is, and follows us, and it is if I ever write in a place where I live, we end up moving. Which is why Stars Don't Lie was not written in Maine. It was written in Vermont because we were a little scared because we had just moved here. The Singing Trees, for the record, was just written or was written before we even came here, and it was during the research that we fell in love with Maine. So I think we're here for a while. I imagine in the next 4 or 5 years we'll become snowbirds and have a little place to sneak away down south or over in Europe because I'm still a Southerner at heart who loves the snow, but when it's cold in March and all my friends down in Florida and South Carolina are starting to dip their toes in the ocean, I get a little bit jealous. However, this state feels like home more so than maybe any other I've ever lived. And we have a little cottage on a place called Peaks Island where I get to go write and get away from, or so my family can push me away and get a break from me. Especially under deadlines like right now. And I absolutely love Maine. And I think we'll be here for a while and maybe even break the curse because I kind of do want to set a book in Maine before too long. And if I have time, I want to tell you what has been going on in my world as far as the Otis story and what I'm going to write after that. I think it's fun to share. And I dare anyone to try to steal the stories because that's, I think the art of any story ideas I have is just getting there and telling it. I don't think the actual premise is enough to walk away with gold. Oh, let's see. I keep kind of reaching for the book. I want to read you one more. What made Boston your choice for the backdrop of An Echo in Time? Now that's a good one. We are close to home. We're like Vermont, and then we're Massachusetts. Because we go down to Boston all the time. We got to see the Hamilton there this year. We go to the North End and we eat Italian food, and it's just kind of our place. It's a beautiful escape, an hour and a half away, and I absolutely adore it and got to know it. And we also have 2 of our best friends that live there, so we Riggs' godparents, so we get to sneak away sometimes. All right. How much time do we have? Okay, let me give you a little taste of Charlie's Mom. I'm going to have to cut this off right at 5:30, so I don't want to go over, and I want to get to some questions and stuff. But there really was something wonderful about this book in that all the characters came alive to me pretty quickly. Right now, I'm writing Otis's book, and there's about 3 characters, main characters, that are eluding me. Like I spend so much time just imagining them, talking to them, free writing about them, and they're just eluding me. And so I'm just playing hard to get. And I'm like, okay, fine. I will just not give you much of the action, and Otis will steer the story. And then in the drafts to come, I'll go back and try to figure you out. I don't think that was the case with An Echo in Time. It really poured out nicely, and I saw these characters so vividly. I don't know. This one really came from the depths of me. So let me touch on mommy. I love creating really toxic mommy characters, probably because they're the opposite of my mom, and they're just so intriguing, and it's amazing what a toxic and dysfunctional mother will do to a person, their daughter or son. So Georgina is very much that kind of person. Every time Charlie makes the drive out to the Cape, so her mom lives in Cape Cod, she spends part of it wondering why she still stays in touch with her mother, let alone visits her. It's a duty fed by this guilt that drives her mad, this guilt that makes her feel like her mother and all her failures is somehow Charlie's responsibility. Her mother's place on the water is a masterpiece, 4,000 square feet of perfection, steps away from a private beach. In the summer, the gardens wrapping around the house evoke Versailles, but only because one of her exes pays for the landscaping, among other things. Her mother, Georgina, greets her at the door, and Charlie can tell she's already been drinking. It's not even lunchtime on Saturday. I thought you were coming early, she says. Oh boy, my Georgina accent is very nasty, very witchy. Charlie swallows a snarky response. Here less than a minute, and her mother is already showing her claws. Georgina is dressed like she's still in her 30s, a tight turquoise sheath showing off her tiny waist, a constant reminder of her mother's abstemious efforts to avoid food at all costs. She has a tan that has no business on a woman in New England. It's from the tanning bed she bought a year ago on a credit card that still needs to be paid off. She wears a gaudy pearl necklace around her neck. Her puffy lifts are enough to keep Charlie away from getting work done for the rest of her life. Same with her mother's oversized implants and stretched face. Where's the dog? Georgina asks. Charlie often thinks of her mother as Georgina because she feels more like an evil stepmother than a mom. I left him at doggy daycare, Charlie says. I didn't want him upsetting you again. Last time Charlie visited, Tiny knocked over a lamp and her mother threw a tantrum. Hopefully they're training him, Georgina quips. Charlie already regrets coming here. There is no lower blow in Charlie's world than an insult to Tiny. Tiny's Charlie's Great Dane. He's far from tiny. I bought you a book, Charlie says, offering an advance reader copy of Gabrielle Zevin novel that arrived as Charlie was wrestling with the decision of whether to go forward with the bookstore. She never did get a chance to order actual copies of that one, as she'd let her dream go long before its publication. This one was great, Mom. You'll devour it. I still haven't read the last one you brought me. Where do you get all this time to read? Charlie shrugs. I make the time. Isn't that all our answers? All us book lovers? They go into the living room, which feels cold with its modern decor. Charlie remembers, okay, you get the point. That is Charlie's mother, and you start to see a pattern. We're going to meet her father also at the beginning, but it's really Georgina's side of the family that has struggled. Okay, let me pause for a second, and then we'll do a drum roll, and then we'll get into England in 1880. I have no idea what I was thinking. All of a sudden, if you read my newsletter this morning, I was saying that my wife told me it was a terrible idea to read the England 1880 parts. And somehow I thought that it would be a great idea despite her warnings. Okay. Glad to hear that your toxic mom writing is not from personal experience. Amen. I had the great fortune of having such a loving family and parents and such a normal, wonderful childhood. What made you create Georgina to be the toxic, crazy mother she is? And how did you make her so miserably authentic? A depth of insanity and selfishness. Yeah, exactly. I guess we just have people like that in our lives. I've met them. Matter of fact, I mentioned expats earlier. This woman is so Georgina, the mother-in-law that appears in, or the mother that appears in episode 3. Again, expats, you comes with a warning. It is really heavy. but one of the finest shows I've ever seen. And episode 3, that mother is Georgina. And once you unleash someone like that in your imagination, they just run wild. And she's still clanking around in her stilettos in my head, sloshing her Sauvignon Blanc and her Chardonnay around at 11 a.m. I mean, I could easily write another story about her. I just love that. And that is very different than the one I'm writing now with this one character who's proving so elusive. And matter of fact, right before I got on the call, I put on a note and I said, figure this woman out tomorrow, whatever it takes. And very often it takes a lot of silence, a lot of walking, and some free writing, and an attempt to quit trying so hard, and it comes out. Someone asked earlier today, someone sent me an email, and they were asking what the challenges were of this one. So you might notice, especially you English hounds, that over the course of the last few books, I'm always trying some new techniques. What I don't want to fall into the trap of, at least not at this point, is writing in a pattern, creating this like habitual third person past tense story about a late 20s man or woman and their struggles. I want to change it up a little bit, which is why sometimes, Singing Trees took place in the 60s, and I don't have it in front of me. I think it was written in third person past. Stars Don't Lie was written in first person past, which I adore. The book that set my literary world on fire back when I was 17 was Nelson DeMille's Plum Island, and that was written in first person. And his character John Corey still has such a deep place in my heart, and I have so much fun writing in first person. Bromo, I see your question. I'll get to you in 1 second, my dear buddy. This one, I thought I'd do something even more challenging, which is write in present tense in the modern day sections, and then move to past tense, third person, in the parts that took place in England in 1880. So you're going to see now back and forth. And I thought, for one, it is so fun writing in present tense. And some of you, chime in right now because I'm curious. Some of you don't like reading in present tense. He sings the song out loud instead of he's saying it out loud. It used to drive me crazy, and then I wrote that way, and now I love it. And my friend Barbara O'Neill said that it makes the books feel more immediate, and the action and the narrative more immediate. And I get that. It really has a nice vibe to it, and it made me write differently. So you'll notice that now the book will open in present tense, but then as soon as we get to Miles, in I don't know how many chapters in, 6 or 7 chapters in, shortly after Charlie's visit to Costa Rica, I go straight to past tense. And I think it really serves the story well, which is ultimately the key, right? Let's see, Mr. Robert Morrison. So my dear buddy, do you have a friend in your life that pulls for you no matter what and supports you, and it's just always there for you, and you feel like if something happened, even if you were at fault, you could call that person and they'd be there for you? That is my friend Robert Morrison, and he has been such a big supporter of my writing, and he gives me a lot of confidence. And he reads all my books early on, right in the advanced reader copy process. And so he has a character. When was that, Romo? I don't even know what book that was. And now he's sad that there's not one in Echo. I can't remember what book it was. I'm going to try to get Romo back into a book. But if you ever see Romo as a name in my books, then you know where it comes from. It's my little nod to my brother in California. Let's see. Let me look at my little agenda and have a beer here. Cheers to everyone. We talked about reviews. We talked about, you know what I'm doing? I'm really just putting off getting into England. So let's just get right into it, and then I'll get into some questions. There we go, Romo. In The Stars Don't Lie, Romo made an appearance. I feel like he was the father's friend who had a heart attack. So I love Romo, but I still had him die in the book, which is it's just part of being an author's friend, Okay, so what we're going to learn, and I'm going to be really careful not to give things away, is that Charlie will go to England, and as she no, I think right after her family constellation therapy in Costa Rica, we jump to meet Miles, and Miles is another character that I got to know really well. He's 17, I think, when we meet him. He's the son and heir to a man who is in the House of Lords. He lives at this fancy property that has a name that I can't remember right now. Forgive me, I'm like 2 books past that right now. But they live in this extraordinary property outside of Winchester, England. And he's being dropped off at Winchester College, which college is a misnomer because it's actually high school, but they call it college. And Miles is his younger brother has fallen in line and is absolutely respectful and dutiful to their father, this man, this House of Lords, who walks with a cane and is really angry and quite as bad as Georgina in a lot of ways. Miles, however, being the older brother and being a creative and not caring to inherit all this money and land and a position in the House of Lords, is a rebel, and he just can't stop himself. So as he gets to Winchester College, he just gets in a lot of trouble. And I really found a lot of myself in that because I went to boarding school and got in a lot of trouble myself. I think most of my teens, I just got in a little bit of trouble, and it was just that rebellious nature that some people just can't quite stifle for a little bit. So I'm going to read just a tad bit from the beginning of when we meet Miles. And forgive me, this accent, it may come out, it may not. I have not worked on it. I haven't ever practiced it. It's just going to come when it comes. Sometimes it's Scottish, sometimes it's American, sometimes it's very South Carolinian. But this is when we meet Miles, and we're just going to get a taste for his life for a second. And then I'm going to jump to a meet cute. I thought that would be a fun thing to do, is Miles falls in love, and I thought it would be fun to see that and hear me try to make conversation dialogue with that. Okay, let me get my readers on. My friend Nina, who I grew up with, who is a beta reader and just a dear friend and wonderful human being. The first thing she said when she saw my video of me reading from a couple of weeks ago, she goes, "You have readers now." There was a time when Nina and I were 10 years old, running around with eyes that worked perfectly, and now I have readers as of last year. But boy, it's nice to see clearly. Okay. Winchester, England, September 4th, 1880. So I should say, so I spent some time in Winchester, and this was the other big challenge is I've never written a book that takes place that long ago. And, when I wrote The Singing Trees, I could get a sense of it because my parents and a lot of people obviously are still alive who lived through the 50s, 60s, 70s and can share things. Once you start writing about 1880, there's just a lot of guesswork. There's a ton of research, reading books and articles that were written in 1880 that are barely legible for me. I mean, I'm just not smart enough to comprehend it, but you get little tastes of what life was like. And I also read fictional works that are based in 1880 that were written now. Anything that I could do to just get a sense. And I also had the great pleasure of going to Winchester College, which is where Sunak attended, the former Prime Minister of England. Extraordinary place, right next to where Jane Austen passed away and where she is buried. Winchester was absolutely wonderful. And I don't know, it was fun to just say, okay, I've done as much as I can, and now I'm just going to make it up because this is my world. These are my books, and I can just create this world, Oh, God. All right. We're going to pause for a second because do you see what my wife just commented? Brace yourselves. Really? This is the support network that I'm working with. If she's not careful, I'm going to put her in my next novel. Just kidding. She's in all of them. She's always the love interest because I just fall in love with her over and over again. All right. Winchester, England, September 4th, 1880. Jenny says, lost video. It might just be you. You guys chime in if otherwise. Or you're being my sweet fairy godmother and you're saving me right as I was about to start reading. No, I guess it's just you. Okay. Miles could not climb fast enough into the carriage. Whereas some boys might enjoy the days between summer and fall terms, he was eager to escape the hell that was his home. The only time there was ever peace at Elmhurst was when his father was away. Even then, the man's energy lingered in every room, strangling the air and poisoning any joy that attempted to take root. It was just under an hour's ride to Winchester, where Miles and his brother Edward attended Winchester College, a preparatory school for 13 to 18-year-old boys. Miles was 17 and facing his last year before graduation. Typically, the coachman would take the boys alone, but their father, a gentleman who carried a position in the House of Lords, had business to attend to in the city. Therefore, both the Honorable James Pemberton and his wife Cora had come along as well. Like their father, the boys, or men as they were addressed at the college, wore polished shoes, pressed shirts, and long waistcoats over trousers. James wanted nothing more than for his boys to be exact replicas of him, and it was this desire that fueled the feud between Miles and him. In fact, Miles was still seething from a fight with his father 2 days earlier. He could still feel the welts from the proper beating he'd endured. All right, so you've got a little taste of Miles, right? I like him. He's a good kid who just is not going to bow down to his evil father's games. So that was maybe August or September, I forgot. Now, one cool eve in October, about 6 weeks after his father dropped him off for the fall term, he decided to sneak out of Moberly House. He sat up from the bed amid a sea of sleeping men. Some snored, some stirred as he crept past, even if they were awake and they'd assume he was going to relieve himself. He passed through the room and down the stairs, then found the window he'd left open during dinner. His heart pounded as he lifted himself up and went out head first. He came down into the street with a tumble, nearly knocking his head on a rock, but he'd made it, and he dusted himself off and stood to surveil his surroundings. Miles was dressed in a simple slacks and a shirt and wished he'd brought a jacket as he quickly walked toward the river in the brisk air. He guessed it was around midnight, and he was surprised to see so many people milling about. Hearing the river calmed him, and as he slowed to a stroll, he enjoyed the fresh, free air and the star-filled sky and the river Itchen that held so many promises in its current, as if a leaping in could simply take him away. "Spare some change, sir," came a husky voice from the darkness. Miles jumped and turned to find a beggar wrapped in a cloak, huddled against the crumbling old wall that once protected the city. He was missing a tooth and shook a cup that jingled with coins. "Just a few pence for food." Miles reached into his pocket, found a shilling, and dropped it into his cup. "God bless," the man muttered back. So there you go. There's a little taste. This is what I hear in my head, except it's far more real when it comes out when it's in my head. Believe me. Miles felt on guard for a moment, his hackles up as he continued along the shore. The darkness exposed a side of the city to which he was not accustomed. He soon saw light ahead, candles and gaslights, and he knew he was coming upon High Street. A stone bridge crossed the river straight ahead, and he caught sight of a lone young woman driving a small carriage over it. She was about his age, maybe 17 or 18. Her curly brown hair shimmered in the moonlight, and he was instantly spellbound. Perhaps it was the way she seemed so content, or the way she handled the horse, giving him a solid whip and whistling for him to carry on. Miles picked up his pace. She barely looked at him as she passed by. He didn't care that she wore only a simple white frock with leather boots that begged to be polished. She was the most beautiful creature he'd ever seen, elegant in her movement, dazzling with her poise. Her eyes glowed in the night, not like a fox's, but like the stars themselves. She made no effort to lure him, but he followed her anyway, watching her gently bounce up High Street to the rhythm of the horse's gait. She looked utterly at ease amid the madness of the city, dodging drunk pedestrians paying her no mind. She eventually came to a stop outside a pub. From inside came boisterous laughter and the clinking of glasses and a tipsy fellow attempting to carry a tune. She climbed off the cart and tied up her horse, took 2 jugs from the back and walked into the pub. Miles seized the opportunity to get closer. So you can imagine little Miles sneaking out of his boarding school, and he's found this young woman on High Street, which is like the main Congress Street of Winchester, and he's sneaking in the darkness trying to get a better look. Through the window, he watched her set the jugs on the back bar. An older man said something to her before she started back toward the door. She made 3 more trips to the cart to unload more supplies. Okay, I'm going to skip for a second. A man left some coins and abandoned his seat at the bar. Miles couldn't take it a moment longer and stepped inside. People were so immersed in their own conversations that they barely acknowledged him. He sat at the bar and waited as she pulled pints for another customer. She looked at him, or barely so. What you have? She was so busy that she went about taking two glasses off the table while waiting on his answer. When she finally gave him a second look, he smiled at her. She chuckled to herself. You gonna stare or have a drink? Miles smiled even wider. A pint, please. She nodded and went to pour him one. There you go, Michaela. A pint, please. I saw you coming up the road earlier, he said. Oh, is that right? You followed me? Miles laughed to himself. Maybe I did. She slid the beer. Maybe that was Scottish. She slid the beer his way. You hungry, too? He shook his head. You're going to hurt yourself staring like that. Would be a good way to go, I suppose. Miles sipped his beer. What's your name? Wouldn't you like to know? He shook his head, feeling his dimples reveal themselves. She was feisty, this one, so very different from the dull and submissive girls with whom his father wanted to pair him. Miles had no interest in marrying a woman like his mother. Nothing to eat, then? She asked. A beer is quite fine. I'm called Miles. She leaned toward him again. Miles, you seem a little young to be out and about. He answered quickly. I'm in town on business. I pegged you for a Wickhamist. He felt like a burglar caught red-handed, and his face surely showed guilt. What makes you say that? Pupils of Winchester College were known as Wickhamists, deemed so after their founder, William of Wickham. The young lady who hadn't shared her name looked him up and down. I spent my whole life here. You all stand out. If I were a Wickhamist, I'm sure I'd be tucked away in my boarding house by now. Being caught would come with grave consequences. He'd seen a boy caned toward the end of the previous year. The screams could surely have been heard in Scotland. She nodded and walked off. Even as she cleaned glasses, she looked angelic. When she came back around, she asked, You really are going to watch me all night? I can't think of anything I'd rather do, other than know your name, of course. She turned to him. Name's Lillian. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. They held a gaze that could have set the world on fire, and Miles felt as if he'd sprouted wings. You work here, he asked. A bright one, aren't you? Miles reddened in embarrassment. My family owns it, she said, saving him from further humiliation. He wondered whether his father had ever passed through here. And what's your story, Miles, if you're not a Wickhamist? He took a long sip of his beer, seeking courage. Good idea. If only I could tell you in this short amount of time. Could we meet again? Lillian studied him, perhaps wondering if he would be worth her time. Miles held his ground. Finally, she shrugged. We'll have to see, won't we? What does that mean? He asked, but she was already walking away. He watched her climb a set of stairs in the back. Suddenly, the man who'd moved the cart had taken position behind the bar. He looked at Miles and said, Have another there? Miles shook his head. No, I'll settle up now. After paying, he glanced back at the stairs one more time before exiting the pub and walking, or floating more like it, back down High Street. He figured that if he was to see her again, he'd best get back to where he belonged tonight. And so if you can imagine, everybody who sneaks out of boarding school is risking getting caught. So there we go. Yes, loved it, and I could just picture how it sounds in your head. What do you do? It's the same with Otis. For some reason, I suppose because I have English roots, I love writing English characters. And I hear Otis right now I'm writing, and he starts at 17, 20, 30, and I'm just still hearing him as he slowly starts to shake his English accent. Okay, you tried. Let's see. Okay, good. We got some good, clean stuff. So if you guys have any questions, fire them off now. Let's see, I'm going to look back here. I wanted to talk just a bit about some future projects and mention one last time if you just joined late and you'd like to take part in a 5-book signed book giveaway, go to my website, bootwalker.com, and sign up for the newsletter, or just make a comment here, put a question. I'm going to scroll through, and maybe I'll try to get to your questions later. I'm so sorry I'm not getting to them all. My wife is watching, and she's going to go at 5:30. She's going to go, okay, time's up, because we have a really lovely night prepared. Our son is coming home from football, and we have a bottle of Acquapinti Frappato from Sicily, and that is a winery that we became familiar with when we honeymooned in Sicily years ago, and it's made by a woman named Arianna Acquapinti, who's arguably the great master of female winemakers in Sicily, and I stuck it in the fridge just before I came up here so that it would have a perfect temperature. And funnily enough, we're ordering pizza, and not only pizza, but my favorite. It's called Otto, which is a delivery here. Um, when we lived on Red Mountain, not even Domino's would deliver to our house. That's how far we were out in the middle of nowhere. And that's the same for all of Red Mountain. Domino's would deliver to the gas station right about 2 miles from Red Mountain, or maybe even a mile. So it really kind of defeated the purpose. So when we first left Red Mountain, delivery pizza became a really special thing to me. I think we'd moved to Florida right after that, and it was just so great. And I still feel that way. So never take for granted your location, and especially if you live in town, know that it's very nice to be able to get delivery pizza. So anyway, I have a beautiful bride and wonderful son that I get to spend the evening with, and we'll probably hang out and watch some AGT and enjoy our wine and have some conversation and celebrate this book and all the sacrifices my family makes to allow me to do this, and celebrate the future. We're so grateful that you guys allow us to do this. What was the name of the Sicilian wine again? So actually, when we were in Sicily, we were in Palermo, staying at this agriturismo, which is kind of like a farm hostel, and we were introduced to a winery called Cos, C-O-S, and it's actually the initials of three last names, and the middle one is Occhipinti, and this man Occhipinti's niece is Arianna Occhipinti, and she makes extraordinary wines under the Occhipinti label. And then there's one more that's a little bit more affordable called SP49, I believe, which is named after a road in Sicily. And they're my favorite wines probably on earth, and my wife too. They're extraordinary and they're hard to get. And we came upon a couple of bottles a few weeks ago and been saving one for tonight. Let's see here. Let me talk about some projects real fast. And then Dory grew up in Benton City near Red Mountain and nothing was delivered. It's probably still the case, though one day it's just going to be extraordinary. There's going to be a pizza place on Red Mountain. And that's what Otis wants. He's fighting for it. So speaking of, I just 2 days ago, maybe yesterday, turned in the copy edits for my new book, The Secrets of Good People, which is the mystery that I had the great pleasure and honor of finishing for a woman named Peggy Shaneberg. She wrote it in 1970, and the story kind of goes, though it's a little shaky, is that she submitted to some publishers, was rejected. The last half of the manuscript was lost. And so her daughter, the amazing Lee, came to me and asked if I would read it and consider finishing it. And I was absolutely floored by it and had no idea what I was getting into. It was an extraordinary challenge, but one that I'm so happy with. I don't know, it could be one of the most fun and rewarding books I've ever written. And certainly it just felt nice in a different way to help Peggy's story come to life. It was absolutely awesome. And there were a lot of times when I was under the gun and I would just close my eyes and I would just try to connect with Peggy and just say, hey, I need some help here, some guidance. And whether you believe in that stuff or not, I'm telling you, my fingers moved when I wasn't sure what to write, and it came out, and it was, I'm really excited for it. So the cover, I've seen a couple iterations and we're about done with it, and I should be able to share it next week. That comes out March 18th. And we're going to also get a second book that comes out next year if I have it in me, and that's Otis's story. What in the world have I taken on with this story? Catching Otis when he's 16 in 1969 and following him all the way to Red Mountain and all the way to almost to where Red Mountain 1 takes place. I mean, I feel like Ken Follett right now. I am writing a saga, and talk about taking on a new challenge. This really is one. This is extraordinary. I loved when I left my thrillers to create page turners. When I left my thrillers, I wanted to create page turners that were didn't have chases in them, guns and deep mysteries. I wanted to challenge myself and write something like Red Mountain, where the page turning came from the drama, sans the explosions and stuff like that. Now I've mixed in a little bit of mystery, but to make a page turner that covers 60 years, um, it's a challenge, and also how to choose what scenes are the most important. And I'm going to try to turn in a draft to my wonderful agent, Andrea, who I think is here, and she's amazing. And she's my first line of defense along with my wife. And we'll see what we have to cut. Maybe I'll save it to share later, but it's going to be the longest book, I imagine. I'm 55,000 words in, and kind of can see the midpoint, but it's still a ways away. But I'm just having faith, and if I get it all wrapped into the dev editor October 31st, then we'll be able to get it out to you next year. So we'll see. As my guru in Spain says, it takes the time it takes. So if it's not ready, the one thing I know is I have an awesome team that will say, hey, let's not rush this. Let's go into the new year and do what you need to do to bring Otis's story to life in the most wonderful way. Um, After that, I have another book in in this 3-book contract that I'm working on right now with Lake Union. And what I originally pitched, I'm starting to question. And for those of you who are still hanging around and listening to me for an hour and being so kind to celebrate with me, I'll share just a little bit about what's in my head right now, and then I'll let you go with that. So I originally pitched a story about a pitcher who gets basically something called the yips, which is very similar to what happened to me with my Folkwood Estonia and my banjo playing. It's a career-ending thing, or so you think. But it's not a baseball story. It's a story of what right now. My agent is going, do not talk about future books, boo. Forgive me, Andrea. I just, I don't know what to say. I'm curious to those who are listening what they think. One of the things that has occurred to me lately, even though it's not a baseball book, it's really about this pitcher's life after baseball. I sense that some people might be turned off by baseball. And as I started to think about that, my goal is to really affect as many hearts as I can around the world. And if there's a subset of people that just see baseball and they think, I'm just not even going to give that a try, or, oh, this is just like John Grisham writing all those wonderful legal thrillers, and then he had to write a baseball book. I don't know that I want to go in that territory. I am looking to grow up my readership and make a bigger difference out there in the world. So I'm pondering other ideas right now. And, a few of them are who else experiences these issues that set them back in their career, physical manifestations of really things that are going on in their head and their heart struggles, whether they're a baseball player or a banjo player. I know that everybody wants to read about a banjo player. But look at this. Kathy says baseball is the best. I'm a Pirates fan. I love baseball too. I didn't know that I did until my son started playing. And now I don't know what is better than watching my son play baseball. And I've fallen in love with the sport just because we sit and watch the kids run around the baseball diamond, multiple hours a weekend. But I've got some other stories in my head, and I'm going to bring up Expats one more time, which I was watching earlier. And it reminds me of Crash, one of my favorite movies ever. And it reminds me of some Woody Allen films. And it reminds me of Red Mountain. And the thing that I really enjoyed about Red Mountain, and even now, I look back and I don't know how I did it, was creating 3, 4, 5 characters and exploring each of them and seeing how they interweave into each other and crash into each other, fall in love with each other, fight with each other. And we get to experience not one character's growth, but 3, 4, 5, and not only see their growth, but experience it through their point of view. So if you remember, Red Mountain starts with Otis, and then I think it goes to Margot, and then Amelia, and who else? And Brooks. And I love that. So if you're ever thinking about what you'd read from me next, I'm open right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts here in the comments, or send me an email. I'm just having so much fun, and I want to do so many things. There's a part of me that wants to write a book set in Spain or Rome or in Italy about a group of expats that fit that thing. And I'm not copying this movie Expats. Actually, I've been writing a screenplay about some expats, and I think about that one. I also have this idea about following an actor who's dying, kind of a Robert Redford character, and as he has lost his golden status as a celebrity and his looks have started to fade, he's starting to look back at his life. Those are three of the 4 or 5 that are lingering in my head. But also, I don't start this till March, and sometimes it's really fun to just trust in the universe and know that when I'm done with Otis, there's going to be this story that just smacks me in the face. And sometimes those are the best stories. All right. I'm going to go back. Forgive me if I didn't catch all your questions. I'm going to go back and read everything. Of course, I'm going to look through and do a raffle to give away some books. And please sign up for my newsletter if you have not. And this is it, An Echo in Time. I'm super proud of it. I hope when you read it, you don't hear my English voice. I hope I didn't taint it for you. Maybe try to hear a young Sean Connery instead. More importantly, I just want to say thank you from me and my wife and my son. I'm going to start crying right now if I don't get off. I'm so grateful that you spend your time with me, that you devote, many hours into reading my books, and that you share your curiosities, and that you pump me up and you give me the courage to keep writing, because it's a lonely, lonely sport, this writing thing. And very often it can be filled with self-doubt, and having you guys by my side is extraordinary. Your notes, they lift me up inside. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good night. I'm going to go kiss my wife and son and be so grateful to be alive. Bye.